The Battle of Umbara, as we've discussed many a time before, was one of the Clone Wars' most crucial battles and was a shining example of clone ingenuity. Several times, split-second decisions by clones and brilliant tactical decisions on their part saved the battle for the Republic, and just as importantly, saved the lives of the men of the 501st Legion and the 212th Attack Battalion. In this video, we'll be discussing one particular split-second idea and why it was so important. In particular, Tup's law near the end of the battle. Umbara was a world of shadows and monsters, a totally alien and inhospitable environment for the men of the Grand Army of the Republic. Among the many creatures that the clones were unprepared to face was the Vixus, a monstrous Sarlacc-like creature that used vine-like limbs to ensnare prey and draw them towards its toothy mouth. The clones first encountered one of these creatures during the 501st's landing, when Trooper Hardcase tripped on one of the vines. Though this Vixus was killed by Fives, it was able to devour a clone before this, which left an impression on many of the men of the 501st, including Tup. Let's fast forward to the end of the Battle of Umbara. By this point, the treachery of Pong Krell had been exposed and the rogue Dark Jedi has fled into the jungles of Umbara. The men of the 501st Legion and the 212th Attack Battalion went after him. Instead, they ended up fighting Krell, who used his mastery of the Force, verbal manipulation, and his skill in lightsaber combat to kill many clones. The attempt to capture Krell looked hopeless, until Tup noticed the Vixus nearby. Tup had the men of the 501st lure Krell toward him, and tricked the general into stepping on one of the Vixus's limbs. The Umbaran monster proceeded to attack Krell as the clones watched, attempting to draw the Basilisk Dark Jedi toward its mouth. Krell used his lightsaber to cut through the Vixus's limbs and ultimately kill the creature, but he was nonetheless distracted by the encounter, allowing the clones to stun him as soon as he finished up.
Captain Rex, this is Tup. If you can, force the General towards me. What? Yeah. Why? Trust me, sir. Troopers, listen up. Circle around. Lure him towards Tup. Hey, ugly! Come and get me! Stunned him, sir. Nice work, Tup.
The subdued General Krell was taken back to the airbase that the 501st had commandeered and executed by Dogma shortly before the Umbaran capital fell. But what if Tup had failed to notice this Vixus, or if the plan went south? The consequences would have been catastrophic, not just for the 501st and the 212th, but also for the Republic at large. First, let's start with the most obvious and most immediate effect of Tup's idea not happening. The 501st Legion and 212th Attack Battalion are slaughtered. The men that Rex took into the jungles with him, as well as Rex himself, all would have died at the hands of General Krell. After cleaning up, Krell might have gone back to the airbase to deal with the clones there, but more likely he would have headed south, toward General Kenobi. Considering that Krell was a traitor, this seems a bit counterintuitive, but consider, at no point between discovering Krell's treachery and attempting to arrest him, did Rex or any of the men of the 501st alert Kenobi or anyone else to it. With the ethos of a Jedi behind him, Krell would have easily been able to spin the story to Kenobi in a light that favored him. Krell's story likely would have been that the men of the 501st Legion had either gone insane or betrayed the Republic, and with most of the notable men in the 501st dead, there would have been no real credible voice to the contrary for Kenobi to trust. Krell likely would have painted the entire 501st Legion as defective, and might even have used the deaths of the 212th clones that had joined them as more evidence for this. With a bit of cover-up work, he could have used the bodies from the friendly fire encounter as proof that the 501st had turned against the Republic. With Rex and Fives dead, there would likely be no real opposition to this claim. What would follow would probably be a Republic bombing strike on the airbase to eliminate the rest of the 501st, and maybe the Kaminoan euthanization of any off-planet Legion members just to be safe. We don't know the full timeline of the Battle of Umbara for certain. It's possible that the Umbaran capital had fallen before Krell's capture. At the latest, it fell shortly after his execution, without involvement from the 501st. Considering that there were other clone units out there, led by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Saesee Tiin respectively, it isn't far-fetched to say that Umbara would have fallen anyway. That leaves us with two paths that this alternate timeline possibly could have taken. First, let's take the less devastating path. That, by the time Krell had gotten to Kenobi, the Republic had already conquered the Umbaran capital, and the battle was more or less won. Krell likely would have resumed his undercover antics, acting as a Jedi while getting clones killed in large numbers, possibly choosing to make his move to prove himself to Count Dooku later in the war, since Umbara would no longer be a suitable candidate. It's impossible to know what effect, if any, this would have had on the greater war. If Umbara had not yet fallen by the time Krell got to Kenobi, however, things would have gone much worse for the Republic. Once more, it's impossible to predict what exactly Krell would have done. He could have taken apart Kenobi's unit and used them to sabotage the assault on the capital. He could have attempted to assassinate Kenobi and take over the unit, or he could have passed on the information to the Umbarans and hindered the siege of the capital. Either way, it's highly likely that he would have been in a position to cost the Republic Umbara. With Umbara firmly in the hands of the CIS, Krell likely would have presented himself to Count Dooku as a new apprentice. Whether Dooku would have taken him into the Dark Acolytes to lead the droid armies on the front lines, or whether he would have had Krell stay in the Order to sabotage their war efforts, we don't know. Either way, it would have been a blow to the Jedi Order and to the Republic as a whole, but that wouldn't have been the worst effect of the loss of Umbara. If the CIS was able to maintain control of Umbara, it would have been devastating for the Republic. Not only would it have given the Confederacy a stranglehold on routes through the expansion region, but it also would have allowed them to cut off all Republic access to Kashyyyk. Cut off from the Republic, surrounded by separatists, and with their planetary neighbors already in league with the Confederacy, the Wookiees likely would have caved into the Trade Federation demands and joined the CIS. The fall of Kashyyyk would have been a boon for the Confederacy. Kashyyyk was considered a symbol of loyalist resistance to the CIS and the Rim, an ideal planet in the galactic fringe. If it joined the Confederacy, then many mid-Rim worlds would have likely followed suit, both out of a lack of faith in the Republic and out of a desire to maintain trade with the Wookiees. The mid and outer rims would have become increasingly hostile to the Republic, more so than they already were at the time. Furthermore, the fall of Kashyyyk would have put the Confederacy in a position to discover the Klartuvak Guild at Kakarot, and they probably would have been able to capture the hundreds of secret hyperspace routes that the Guild was privy to. Armed with all of these new invasion corridors, the Confederacy would have been able to outmaneuver Republic forces in the slice at every turn, which, combined with the continuing secessions in the mid and outer rims, would have made entire swaths of the outer galaxy unviable. The Republic's armies would have been cut off from each other, save through the core, and the Confederacy would have decidedly gained the advantage in the Clone Wars. With the scales tipped heavily in their favor at the end of 21 BBY, it's definitely possible that the CIS could have won the Clone Wars. The addition of manufacturing worlds and key resources in the Outer Rim and the further depletion of Republic military forces means that the Confederacy's 20 BBY campaigns, which included Operation Dirge's Lance, may well have succeeded. This would have spelt doom for the Republic and would have resulted in a galaxy in the grip of the CIS. But instead, none of that happened. Instead, one clone trooper had a split-second idea that allowed the clones of the 501st Legion to capture Pong Krell, resulting in the execution of a traitor and victory on Umbara. Thanks to Tup, the Republic was in a much better spot after the Battle of Umbara than they would have been otherwise, and the galaxy had one less Dark Jedi. The Kaminoans weren't lying when they told Obi-Wan Kenobi that clones were far superior to droids because of their capacity for human thought and imagination. Indeed, I would go as far as to say that they were making an understatement. Clone ingenuity is what won the Clone Wars, and Tup is living proof. Whether winning the Clone Wars was a good or bad thing in the long term is up to you. But anyways, what do you guys think? Do you think an alternate timeline here is accurate, or are we just grasping at straws? More importantly, do you like these sorts of alternate history videos, and do you think we should do more in the future? Post your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you want to play as your very own clone, make sure you check out our Clone Wars roleplay where you can play as clones, our Imperial roleplay where you can play as stormtroopers, and our Halo roleplay for a nice bit of nostalgia. Also, don't forget our Roblox roleplay, which has a variety of clone morphs and a couple of different game modes coming out very soon, some of which are still secret, but make sure you join all the groups. All the links are in the description below. So make sure you click on the Discord ones, click on our Steam group, and consider donating to my Patreon, as I'm doing this full time now, so your support is greatly appreciated. Anyways guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.